Hey scholars, welcome to our AP Environmental Science exam review. Throughout this entire series, we're going to be taking a closer look at the Barron's book. There's an image of it for you on the screen, but that's the third edition. We're actually going to be taking a little bit closer look at the fifth edition. We'll be using some visual of the third edition, but I'll be highlighting some things on the fifth edition of this book because this is the most recent and up-to-date version of the book, and the people who create the Barron's book are actually They work very closely with the people who actually create the AP exam put out by the College Board. So what we're going to do is take a closer look at this book. This will give you a total glimpse of what you can expect on the exam. And in this first session, we're going to take a look just specifically at the book and at the exam itself. So let's take a closer look at it. So this is the contents of the book. And this is just kind of showing you the different units and by chapter. Chapter 1's Earth. Chapter 2 is the atmosphere, global water resources and use, and that's the first unit. That's 10 to 15% of the exam. There's also the unit 2, the living world, is also 10 to 15% of that. That is about ecosystems and the natural biogeochemical cycles like carbon cycle, nitrogen cycle, etc. Unit number 3 is on populations. That's also 10 to 15%, looking at population dynamics, growth, etc. And then you've got Unit 4, land and water use, which makes up 10 to 15%, looking at land and water, how to use it, forestry, rangeland management, fishing management, all that kind of stuff. Unit 5 is about energy resources and consumption. It's also 10 to 15% of the exam, and usually you see one of the essay questions about this topic as well, specifically some of the math-based portions of it. This is all about energy, non-renewable and renewable. Unit 6 is about pollution. That is 25 to 30% of the exam. When they're looking at these percentages, they're looking at the multiple choice section specifically. So that's air pollution, noise pollution, water pollution, thermal pollution, all those different types of pollution, as well as the impacts on the environment and also on human health. So those kind of pollution and human health go hand in hand in that section. Unit 7 is on global change. That's the last portion. That's 10 to 15% of the exam, looking at ozone depletion, global warming, and all the things that stem with that. So that's kind of the glimpse of the chapters of the book. But again, this says what's new in the third edition. This third edition was written actually before some major changes happened with the exam. So I'm actually going to focus more on what's in the fifth edition of this book. And I know this isn't going to show you on here, but if you do buy the new copy of this book, you can get it on Amazon for pretty cheap, probably used, and it would still be relatively between maybe no more than 20 bucks, I would think. But in the new edition, you've got 100 brand new multiple choice questions with all new answers explained. It comes with all the chapters have been fully updated as far as the recent changed environmental law and recent impacts like the earthquake and tsunami that hit Japan, and also the severe tornadoes that occurred across the U.S. in 2011-2012, which we were impacted by that as well here on the coast. Also new charts and different things. There's also a new CD-ROM that comes with the book, which actually has 2 more practice exams that will score it for you. So I definitely recommend taking a look at that 5th edition. Okay. We're first going to take a look at the AP exam itself when we go through this. But before we do that, there's in this new edition, the 5th edition, it takes a look at 5 Barron's essentials in order to prepare that you must do to prepare yourself to get a 5 on this AP exam. And the first one is that you need to practice writing your own answers to those free response questions, those FRQs. After you review each of those FRQs, close the book, write down your own response to the question, and then compare yours with the book for every chapter. If you do that, it'll make you a better writer as well as kind of see where you're at as far as topics goes for each of those chapters. Number 2, it says be sure to review the case studies presented in the book, and that's very, very important. I try to hit a lot of case studies in class, but there's even a few other case studies that we don't touch base on in class in the book. And so we definitely want to pay attention to those because those usually come up sometime. You can use those in your FRQs or your free response questions, as well as maybe also help you out with some of those multiple choice questions. Number 3 is thoroughly review chapters 9 and 10, the pollution and the impacts of the environment on human health. Because they're 25 to 30% of the exam, multiple choice questions that is, you definitely want to have a really, really solid knowledge of those 2 chapters. Number 4, become comfortable with doing with types of math problems found in the book, especially those involving energy calculations. So I mentioned that on chapter 8 over here. There's going to be at least usually one essay question having to do with energy calculations. Now, although I'm not super good at math, I will. I have have got the resources of a lot of teachers in the math department, and specifically one is going to actually come and help us out with some of these math problems, and I'll post those videos on here as well. The last but not least, number 5, is review the relevant acts, laws, and treaties detailed in each chapter. So you definitely want to take a look at all those acts and laws and treaties, and we go over some of them in class, but there are some extra ones that you definitely want to review and know specifically what the outcomes were of those. Okay, so those are the kind of the big 5 Barron's essentials. Let's take a closer look at the format of the AP exam itself. The AP exam is 2 parts. It's one part which is multiple choice questions. This actually, your score is 60% of this. And it lasts about 90 minutes, consisting of 100 multiple choice questions. So you've got an hour and a half to answer 100 questions, and that's 60% of the exam. Then you're going to have thought-provoking problems and question-based on fundamental ideas, looking at the free response section, or the FRQs. So the free response section will be also 90 minutes long. It makes up only 40% of your final score, and there's 4 questions. So each of those questions is worth 10% basically overall. So let's say if you totally botch one of them, you're looking at 90% still of the points that you could accumulate. Okay, so or if you just totally skip one, that's only 90. That's still 10% off the top of your exam. You're already at 90%. So kind of keep those kind of things in mind overall. Okay, test taking strategies. Let's take a look at some test taking strategies. First of all, these scores are kind of, these are how the scores work. The 5 is extremely well qualified. That usually gets you into elite colleges, or at least the credit will be given to you in those elite colleges. Number 4 is well qualified. That will also get you into some most of your state schools. 3 qualified, they'll accumulate some credit for you, probably not for those elite colleges, but for smaller schools. 2 and 1 really gets you possibly qualified, but there really no one ever gives you any credit as far as college credit for those scores. And so that's kind of the gist of the scoring. Most of colleges, again, accept 4 or 5s, and many colleges may accept 3s, but scores of 1 or 2 really aren't accepted by anybody. Now, here's kind of the rule of thumb with this. Let me go over this rule of thumb with you. It says the rule of thumb in determining how well you probably do on the AP exam is that if you consistently get between 50 and 60% of the multiple choice questions correct, you should receive a minimum score of a 3. If you consistently get between 65 and 75%, you're looking at ability to achieve a 4. And if you get over an 80 to 100 correctly, you should be looking at a 5 if you have the writing skills that will support you with those FRQs. Okay? The multiple choice questions, again, go through the entire set of multiple choice questions, answering only the ones you know first. Again, now this is different. This says, remember there is a penalty for wild guessing. That is incorrect. This version of the Barron's book, the 3rd edition, was written before the rules changed. Now there is no penalty for guessing. When in doubt, BBBB, CCCC, in order to get as many points as you possibly can get. So there is no, it's not like the SAT. There is no penalty for guessing whatsoever. So if you get in a crunch and there's like a minute left on those 90 multiple or 100 multiple choice questions, start filling in bubbles, because that at least could get you some points. There's no penalty for guessing. Only points for right answers. The types of multiple choice questions. Let's take a look at these types of multiple choice questions. One of the easiest probably one is the definitional question. Any factor that influences natural process in our study is, this. I mean, these are the kind of simple definition questions. And one thing I do recommend too, in using for answering these questions correctly, are the AP Environmental Science flashcards from the Barron's. It gives you basically a whole bunch. I mean, pretty much every vocabulary word term you would ever need to know as far as answering those questions. And if you know the definitions of these things and these topics, you should be more well qualified to use them in your essays as well. So I highly recommend the AP Environmental Science Barron's edition of the flashcards. Okay, cause and effect relationships are another one. That type of if this happens, then what else would happen? A sequencing of related events and ideas, so kind of putting things in order of how they might play out. Positive and negative feedback loops would be a good example for using this one. Generalization, so looking at kind of a generalized viewpoint, looking at, this one says determining a causative agent for cancer. Which one of these is generally considered to be the most significant factor, so a generalization of a topic. Solution to a problem. So if you're giving a situation like this, looks like there's a scenario-based question, then what should be the solution to the problem be? Hypothetical situations might give you a certain situation they might think up and ask you, predict kind of the outcome of what might happen. Chronological problems, kind of looking at which happened first as far as place of events. Now this is looking at all these different major case studies of environmental pollution in order of events. So that's chronological. The second one is on this page is comparing and contrasting concepts and events, and looking at different the concept versus the event that happened, and kind of analyzing those two. Multiple correct answers. Now this is probably everyone's least favorite because it says I call them the multiple multiples. Nitrogen is assimilated in plants in what form, and it gives you A, B, C, and D as actual choices, and then it might give you E as like both B, C, and D, and sometimes they don't even give you D. They say both B, C, and A, and then it's just A, A, B, and C are your answers. So those are kind of tricky and very, very difficult questions in my opinion. The negative questions, and I use a lot of those in our everyday quizzes in class, just kind of using that big except, like given an information, accept this, find the one that doesn't match, okay? A short narrative passage. Now sometimes they'll give you one of those where it's just a little quote. That's kind of why I put my thought of the day up on the board and ask you to kind of analyze it. Short quotations, again, same kind of thing. Short narrative, short quotations are kind of in similar both. They're asking you to kind of come up with a concept that fits that quotation. Environmental case law, looking again acts and policies that have been put in place by the government. That actually happened. Those questions come up quite a bit. Sketch or diagram. I give you some sort of image and ask you to analyze it, and most of those ones should have come from our textbook or this book. So hopefully definitely pay attention to all the pictures and images within both those things. Graph or table interpretation. These are something that we work on, every once in a while in class, especially some of in our FRQs. Taking a closer look at here is some data, analyze it. It's why I have you do those bigger labs in class. The Biodiversity of Arthropods lab and also the Herpetological survey. Taking a look at analyzing data and being able to come up with some inferences about that. Okay. The final word about the multiple choice questions. There are a variety of sample multiple choice questions with 5 possible answers. Other methods includes all this sort of stuff. I give you, again, just kind of what this book uses, 5 multiple choice questions, and sometimes there are multiple multiples. I give you a variety of types of questions on our quizzes and tests. All right, let's take a look at the FRQs. Now, there are 3 different types of FRQ questions. One is data analysis. Number 2 is document-based issues. So there's a document, you've got to analyze it and then write about it. And number 3 is synthesis and evaluation. And usually they always have at least 1 data analysis, maybe 1 to 2 document-based, and then 1 to 2 synthesis and evaluation. Okay? And the data analysis set basically presents data in a tabular or graphical format. You've got to be able to look at it and analyze it and then really, really come up with your inferences and discuss it in an essay. So the document-based one presents kind of that real-life document. The synthesis and evaluation questions are in-depth essays, kind of questions often with multiple parts. And that's probably the ones we practice the most in class because they just have so many parts to them. And I think because they usually show up twice. So I usually pull those for the most part. I usually give you an option of one of those and also a document-based question as well. Again, the scoring is from 1 to 10. You're trying to get a 10 on every essay. That gives you a total of 40% of your exam grade, and they all must be answered within 90 minutes, which is exactly why on our timed writings in class, or our FRQs, we time them with 22.5 minutes, which is exactly 1/4 of 90 minutes. So that is kind of where we're at with this. There's the free response scoring. To get a 5, has to have an excellent thesis statement, good explanation of data, responds to every section of the question, and you're using accurate, specific examples to support your response. So that's what we're going after every single time with earning those students earning those 5s. Got to have one of those. All right. So other things to take a look at within this are key phrases. And just kind of the free response question often includes a phrase that should guide you how to write your essays. The following table lists as many of these as possible. So analyze the effect. They want you to evaluate the impact. Analyze the effect of whatever they're giving to you. Assess the accuracy. Determine the truth is kind of what that means in layman's terms. It means assess the accuracy of the following statement. A high birth rate corresponds to a high standard of living. Is that correct or false, and explain why? Compare the strengths and the weaknesses. Show the differences between comparing and contrasting. Okay? Critically evaluate evidence that both supports and refutes. Basically gives examples that agree and or disagree of both sides. Define and evaluate the contention, which means give a definition and then analyze the point of view behind it. Again, right or wrong answers? Possibly, but it depends on which side you take or point of view you take. Discuss means give examples and that illustrate what you're trying to talk about. Evaluate the claim. Determine the validity. So how valid is this data or is this situation, and kind of go forth with that. Explain. Offer the meaning, cause and effect, and or the influence that it might have on a major situation or a more broad event. To what extent? Explain the relationship and the role of whatever it's asking you about. Okay, so here's kind of a gist at constructing your essay. And this says the top T, the thesis statement, okay? Tells reader how you would interpret the significance of the subject matter, kind of the roadmap of the essay, kind of a little bit of an intro, using a single sentence somewhere in your first paragraph that presents your argument to the reader. But most of the time saying, this is how it is, or this is not how it is. And then you're to support with evidence. So evidence 1 includes historical content, facts, people, environmental concepts. You can draw, label a diagram. If you've got time or you're more of those mental and drawing persons, you can do that. Analyze the data, pros and cons of the issue. Evidence 2 would be any sort of case study that you remember or any sort of relevant facts or situation that you know about would go in evidence 2. Evidence 3 would be any then and their laws that associate with that. So if it's a situation about air quality, you might want to talk about the Air Pollution Act, or something or things like that, okay? Or air quality act. Relevant laws is evidence 3, and finally your conclusion is just summarizing in a few sentences what you discussed in your final statement about it. Okay, so that's kind of a little tip on constructing your essay. So here are our topics discussed again, cover on the exam. I'm not going to go over all into these individually, but we kind of mentioned these major headings. These are kind of the things to take a look at. If you want to pause and take a look at all those, you're more than welcome to at this point. If you did, great, welcome back. But we're going to go ahead and move on to looking at questions commonly asked about the exam. And there's some things that are kind of change on this a little bit that I want to talk a little bit more about. This one says, how are questions graded? Again, sections 1 were 60%. It's 90 minutes long. It's 100 multiple choice questions. You need to answer around 50% of multiple choice. That is incorrect. Again, you're trying to answer all of them to get as many points as possible. So there's no harm in just if you need to guess because the more you guess, the least better opportunity you have of getting points. There's no penalty for more penalty for wrong answers. The multiple choice questions are based on the recall, basic facts, and major concepts environmental section. Section 2 is worth 40% of your score. It's also 9 minutes long. It consists of 4 essay questions or FRQs, free response questions, and you're trying to hit all the points we just discussed in the last section there. What do the scores mean? The APES exam is graded on a 5-point scale. Now, these percentages actually are a little bit off, so I'm going to go over these with you. 5 is passing, definitely passing. And it does say 9% earn this score. That stays the same. 4 is passing. Actually, that has gone from 23 to 25%. So a few more people getting 4s. Unfortunately, though, 3 is also passing, and that was 19. Now it actually has gone down today, and this as far as these stats, to 15% earn this score. And not passing, getting a 2 is 25%, so that's gone up by 7%. And then not getting a 1, 31% actually is 26%, so that's gone down. So just a little bit of shift in that in those numbers a little bit. Okay. What materials do you take? Calculators are not allowed. I will show you how to do the math. Well, I will not. One of my colleagues will show you how to do the math-based questions without a calculator, and you're not allowed to bring those. So bring a couple number 2 pencils, an ID if you need to. Because it's given here at the school, you probably won't have to have that, but just in case, social security number, etc. Should you guess? This says there is a penalty. There is no penalty for guessing whatsoever. If you're in a, like I said again, time crunch happens, you're at a minute left in the multiple choice, BBB, CCC, guess away because it doesn't hurt you overall. Maybe you might get a couple more answers right. Can you cancel your score? I believe you can cancel your score. Your request must be received though by June 15th. So if you may also request that 1 or more of your AP grades not be sent to colleges by that date as well. You can write in the test booklet. Definitely take that advantage of that. And if you need any more information, hit up the apcollegeboard.com, apcentral.collegeboard.com for more information, also for more practice questions. Okay, so hopefully that gave you a good overview of the test and also the beginnings of the Barron's book. We'll see you with the next video and jumping right into content from the AP Barron's book. See you guys next time.